All right. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Harry Baldock. I'm the editor of Total Telecom. It's great to have you all here today for a session on a really important topic, I think, on navigating the circular economy of mobile devices. And I'm sure we'd all agree here at MWC, the sustainability has been a huge topic.
Yeah.
And I think from a journalistic point of view, I'm often encouraged to approach this topic from the terms of energy efficiency and renewables and things like that. And I think we're slowly moving now towards a different discussion, kind of dealing with Scope 3 emissions, the supply chain, customers, and how that can have a huge impact. So I'm really excited to be here and talk about such an important topic today. I'm joined by a great panel. To my left, there's Stephen Moore, Head of Climate Action for the GSMA. We have Georgianne Riegel, the CEO of Kingfisher, and on the end, Amy Wettenhall, the Group Owner for Mobility at Telstra. So thank you all for joining me, guys. I'm looking forward to a really exciting discussion with you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Stephen, perhaps we can come to you first, and you can give us a bit of an overview about where the industry is at so far with this topic. I know the GSMA had released a white paper at the end of last year about the circular economy and where we're at. So maybe you can share some kind of key learnings that we had from that report.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. I think one of the striking things that we found doing the research for the strategy paper is that 80% of the environmental impact of a phone happens before you take it out of the box. So I think that's immediately helped us focus our minds on thinking about the supply chain for mobile phones. Then we started to dig a little bit deeper and discovered that if you were to extend the lifetime of a phone by just 1 year, it would be the equivalent of taking almost 5 million cars off the road. So we put the research together. We had consultations across the industry with mobile network operators and beyond. And we included in the paper a vision for the future for sustainable mobile devices. And the vision is that devices will have as long as lifetime as possible, using made out of 100% recycled content, using 100% renewable energy, and they're also 100% recyclable as well. And we think that's really key. There's no mobile at the moment that fits that description, but we're seeing some really positive advances across different manufacturers. And we're also seeing from our members, mobile network operators as well, looking to support device refurbishment and extending the lifetime of devices as well.
Amy, maybe you can jump in here. From an operator's perspective, do you think sustainability in this sense is a real focus for customers? Are they really pushing for this when they're talking to you?
Yeah, look, 100%, and we really echo the findings of the GSMA report. And I guess for us, consumers are looking to us to achieve two things. So the first is really partnering with products and technology companies that are going to support the sustainable offerings that they're looking for. They're no longer looking just for a brand new phone. They're looking to have sustainable choices. But it's also about how we turn up in terms of our own sustainability posture. So at Telstra, we've had our own operations carbon neutral since 2020. I was also thrilled to work with Climate Active, and we've recently certified all our mobile phone plans as being carbon neutral, and we've launched a carbon offset program so that our consumers can offset different emissions of their day-to-day life using our Telstra loyalty points. And so that could be offsetting your mobile phone, a new phone, 100 kilos of carbon, a refurbed phone, 6 to 7 kilos, or I was horrified to find out my own dog Rusty emits 700 kilos of carbon a year, so we as a family race to offset that.
And Georgianne, you're obviously working with Amy and Telstra in the kind of moving towards a more holistic model of looking at these sustainability impacts, I suppose, in general. What kind of things do you think are perhaps the most important that have been kind of outlined by Amy and Stephen here? Are they really resonating with you as well?
Absolutely. And, like Kingfisher, what we're focused on is extending the lifetimes of a phone. One of the most important things that helps to drive the lifetimes is actually changing what is currently a very linear supply chain where, this year 1.4 billion new devices will go out into the market. And this year, over 5 billion phones will end up in landfills or in drawers in 2023. And that's something we can't sustain. We need to change that. And today, it varies country to country, but somewhere between 10 and 30% of phones are traded in when someone takes out a new phone. And that's not good enough. We need to get to a more circular system where for every new device sold, we're taking one back in, refurbishing it, and putting it into another lifetime. And so Kingfisher is working with Telstra, both in terms of driving trade-ins into the program, but also changing customer behavior. So what we find is that customers, when the phone's already in the drawer, it takes a large amount of money promise to get that customer back in. That ends up being just another form of subsidy. And so what we're trying to work with Telstra to do is design programs that change customers' behavior from the beginning, from the outset. So when customers have a program that they are involved in that is frictionless, where they come into it with the mindset of, I'm going to use this phone for a period of time, and then I'm going to bring it back in and take out my next one. Then we start to get the circularity. We're able to bring those back in, put them into a second lifetime. And that's what we've been working together on.
And then giving them those buying choices. So we sell second-hand phones in one of our sub-brands, Belong. There was a really clear consumer ask for that. So the consumers want to change their behaviour is the learnings that we've had. They just don't know how, and they are looking for those different types of solutions, be it refurb, trade-in, upgrade, and that's what we're seeing in our market.
Do you think it's definitely an education element in terms of kind of passing on this information to the customer and making the journey as simple as possible? I think many of us are probably guilty of putting our old mobile phones in a drawer somewhere and then forgetting about them, because if you don't have a simple option with a kind of clear benefit to you, why would you dig in to maybe get a few pounds or a few dollars or something like back in your pocket at the end of the day? Stephen, maybe you can talk a bit more about this kind of mindset change for the industry. I think it's not just customers that are going to need to change, but we've got to really be engaging with the manufacturers, the kind of the retail outlets, every part of this kind of ecosystem on the device's life cycle. It all has to be kind of working together and collaborating. And how do you think we should be kind of focusing on that moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. It really is a systemic transformation that we need to see happen. As Georgianne said, so we're moving away from a model which is based around a linear model. So basically we're taking things out the ground, you manufacture them, and then actually a lot of the time either they end up in a drawer or they end up back in the ground. So we need to move towards a more circular model, and that means we need to capture things at the end of lifetime. And we need to effectively have reverse logistics models to bring those back in so that we can either refurbish, reuse phones, or we can actually take, if that's not viable, we can take the materials and components within those phones and use them ideally to make new phones. And there's some promising things around that we're seeing from the manufacturers. So Apple, for example, recently announced the average recycled content across the whole of its product line, which at the moment is sitting at around 20%. So it's relatively low, but there's clearly great scope for that to be improved in the future. Apple's also made a very big commitment around using 100% renewable electricity in the whole of its supply chain by 2030. Samsung recently made a similar announcement back in September. So we are seeing a shift. We've heard from Nokia actually just before MWC talking about a phone that's easy to repair. So again, we're seeing a further shift there. But we really need more collaboration between manufacturers, between mobile network operators, between refurbishers and recyclers, and also with customers as well, because we need to persuade them to engage on this topic, to dig that phone out of the drawer, to send it in, to have it be processed so it's being put to good use.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of a matter of making it worthwhile for everyone. And I know in just a moment we'll kind of touch on probably the benefits for kind of operators and customers and the environment, and how it can all be a big benefit for the whole community. But Amy, I think you've already kind of mentioned it briefly, but I just wanted to kind of go back to the ways in which you're kind of engaging with customers on kind of multiple levels. I know you have kind of an upgrade and protect program, you've got a trade-in program, you do repairs.
We do.
So you're really offering a whole kind of a plethora of different ways that people can engage with this kind of
Yeah, it really needs to be the sustainability option that works for the individual customer, personalised to them. So trade-in, refurb, repair that we've talked about. Also recycling is a really important one that Stephen touched on. We have a mobile muster program, so we've got a commitment to recycle 500,000 phones a year. And it's providing that customer journey to be frictionless and seamless so that the customers really do step up and engage with it. So we're kind of tackling it end to end and really trying to create that deep circularity in our model.
And the mobile muster is an interesting example, isn't it? Because that's Australia-wide.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, it was government created and everyone sort of takes part, or is it independent from the government?
It's slightly independent, but we have
Okay.
our own individual commitment on the 500,000 phones, and
Yeah.
we've been hitting that year on year. So we're seeing Australians more and more pulling those phones out of those drawers and bringing them into us, which is great to see.
Do you think maybe that's a stakeholder in this discussion that isn't being brought in enough? Maybe the kind of regulatory bodies or the government. Do you think they should be pushing, the operators, the manufacturers, customers? Do you think that should be coming from them as well in terms of this discussion?
I mean, from what GSMA members are telling me, it's a real challenge in many markets because there isn't, it's different in European context or in Australian context because there is a formal recycling scheme or program and facilities that actually that doesn't exist in a lot of countries. So, it's actually quite difficult for some of our members to take on targets around this because they know that they're not necessarily going to be able to hit them in some countries because there isn't a facility to be able to send the phones within that country to have them repaired. And there might be some challenges, or recycled, there might be some challenges there actually around sending that across border because of, there are regulations around e-waste and what you can do with e-waste. So yeah, it's a big challenge. And also there's the issue of open waste burning sites, which we see in quite a few countries. And that was one of the other unfortunate stats actually we found in the strategy paper was that there's around 30 million people affected from open waste burning sites. So there's a negative social impact of the fact that people are working on these sites, and it's actually quite bad for their health.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just the carbon emissions that are coming off this. It's directly having a negative impact on the people that are nearby. Georgiana, maybe you can talk a little bit more about. I guess this is such a long-term process, isn't it? This is really a mindset change for the whole industry. But it's something that can really benefit not just the customers, not just the environment, but the operators are clearly getting quite a bit of benefits as well. So what do you see as kind of the long-term benefits of this kind of more holistic approach, I guess?
Absolutely. I think in order to make change happen at scale, we can wait for regulation or we can collectively try to get in front of that. And if we can figure out a commercial solution that works for all the different stakeholders and the parties, that helps us to reach those goals, then we can probably do it faster, more efficiently, and simpler. And so that's, I think, one perspective that we would support. Ultimately, in order to make this change happen at scale, we need to make it in consumers' interests and in mobile network operators' interests, right? It can't be seen as a trade-off. One way to get long lifetimes of devices is to have each device be used by a single person for 6-7 years. But that doesn't really work for consumers. Consumers don't want that. They want the latest technology. And it doesn't work that well for mobile network operators either, because you want to monetize the network investments and you want people on 5G and the next technologies, et cetera. And so what we can do by trying to drive multiple lifetimes for a single device, we allow those customers who do want the latest technology to frictionlessly get into that next technology at the pace at which they want, right? But then also know that they are making a sustainable choice by trading that in, because 77% of consumers now want to make a sustainable choice. And so we can enable that without them having to sacrifice or make a trade-off with what they want. And from a carrier perspective, an operator perspective, if we can also make that commercially beneficial, remove any risk that they see with the circulation of those devices and take those off of the mobile network operators, then we can make it in their interests as well and drive their core KPIs, then that's how we can get to scale.
It's an interesting point you make there about the complexity of these programs. It's really easy to sit up here and talk about trade-in and repair and refurb, but actually to roll that out at scale in a mobile operator context is not simple. And the point you make there about some mobile operators in certain jurisdictions being challenged by that, I think is a really interesting point. And possibly we should, as mobile operators, do more to knowledge share across the industry about what solutions work in what markets and how we set them up and how we monetize them and how they support circularity, because they're not simple solutions. They are complex by their nature as well. And I think we need to acknowledge that.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said for the fact that from the customer's perspective, what they want to be able to do is to walk into a store or whatever and simply hand over a device and they get another device or some money back. But obviously, the back end of that, there's a lot of complexity and it's not a simple process. Do you think, in terms of sharing between, I guess, competitors as well, is that something that that the industry in general is kind of moving towards, a more kind of, I guess, unified approach to this, maybe led by the GSMA, for example?
I think unified is a
too strong a term.
Yeah, maybe too strong a term, but there's definitely
collaborative.
Collaborative. We use the slightly clumsy term co-opetition, actually, because there is a lot of cooperation, but there is some competition added in there as well. But actually, what we've seen is this in other areas. So climate targets is one, actually.
Yep.
In that we have an industry ambition to be net zero by 2050. And we've actually seen many operators kind of leapfrog each other over, upping their ambition themselves in terms of their climate targets. So we had originally them aligning their climate targets with 2050. We've actually had a group that now have gone faster than that within Europe, aligning them to 2040. And we've even got one or two that are really pushing that and going for 2030. So it's interesting. That's come about because we have knowledge shared about what you can do, how you can switch to renewables, energy efficiency, and now we're kind of focusing on this really tricky topic of Scope 3 emissions, which effectively is the supply chain, which effectively is by and large mobile devices, although it also covers network equipment as well. So I certainly see from my point of view at the GSMA, because we have a task force that has more than 60 mobile network operators. Telstra is a member of the task force, and we have a lot of interest in discussing more about this topic and trying to find out what the solutions are. And they will vary from country to country, territory to territory, based on different regulations and based on the appetite of the consumer.
And also the extent to which, or the pace at which operators are able to roll out the new generations of technology. There will be some countries and some operators that practically, are at the infancy of their 5G rollout. Telstra is very well advanced in our 5G rollout. That talks directly to being able to be more energy efficient with our network, so we're able to go a little bit quicker there. And then share the knowledge of how we've done that journey with the other operators. But we're very open to that, and hence we're part of that task force.
Yeah.
Would you like to see that, maybe, Amy, go in a similar way to what Stephen was saying about that kind of one-upmanship, that kind of, we can go one step faster, we can go one step quicker? Do you think that kind of metric and that kind of mentality should be kind of incorporated for device recycling programs and lifestyles like life cycles, like that?
I certainly think that incentivization works really well. And we should do all we can to lean in to incentivize ourselves to go faster and to do better. And we constantly challenge ourselves to do that. And the change at which the pace is happening in the market certainly drives our focus on those areas. So in that respect, I would say so, yeah.
And Georgianne, in terms of, I guess, really delivering those benefits to the people outside of the telecoms world, maybe the manufacturers more directly, they're in a good place to benefit from programs like this as well, because I think you yourself, Stephen, were on this panel yesterday, I believe, talking about, do we simply make too many devices? Is that a challenge for the industry? How do we kind of rectify that? And obviously, if you're having these conversations with the manufacturers, kind of being like, guys, you should slow down a little bit. But at the same time, there's a huge demand for the latest devices. People want to be using the latest networks, the latest capabilities. How do you kind of rectify that and kind of convince them that this is a positive step and it's in their interest to do this?
Yeah, I think any OEM's worst nightmare is probably every consumer holding onto their phone for 6-7 years, right? So, so absolutely, these types of programs are generally viewed very positively by the OEMs because they're able to upgrade customers to the latest technology without that being a trade-off with sustainability goals for the operator. So they tend to be pretty supportive. And ultimately, from a customer's perspective, they don't know, coming back to your point about simplicity and complexity of these programs, a customer doesn't know, I want to trade in, or I want to upgrade, or this is a warranty issue, or this is that. They don't know that. They just know that I want that new device because I want that new phone, and they just want it to be simple. So I don't know what's going on. If my problem with my phone is a warranty issue, or if it's it's my own fault or anything like that, or am I partway paid off on my device financing, or is it all fully paid off? They don't know that. They just know, how can I get into my next phone quickly without friction? And that is good for the OEMs, and if we make that in the interests of the carriers as well, we can drive the model.
I think there's also we've seen a massive growth in the repair refurbishment market over recent years, and again, one of the stats that we have in the strategy paper is that it's projected to be worth $140 billion a year by 2030. So I think that there is money to be made in this. It's not just about making money from selling new devices, and we've seen new entrants come into the marketplace, like Kingfisher, like others, who are creating a business model around this. And we're also seeing that there are circular business models around having a phone where it's more of a service, device as a service, where you get repair and refurbishment included as part of what you're paying on a monthly basis. So certainly see there are different ways of making money. There are new business models that are emerging.
And I guess one of the things that I really like to touch upon is there's obviously these long-term benefits to this program. It's going to be a slow and steady change, I think. But this idea of kind of extending the lifespan, I think we kind of touched on it here, that recycling is fairly well established. The consumer very much knows, hey, parts of this device will be recyclable, and I should probably do that in some way, although in practice maybe not enough for actually taking up that option. But kind of the process of giving these mobile devices new lives and things like that, I think people often think of these kind of things as handing over a device that their operator is maybe going to hand over to some of their more vulnerable customers and things like that, and think of it almost as in those social terms. But it doesn't have to be that. I think there's this very much kind of a commercial appetite for the high-level phones, the mid-level phones. It goes all the way down, and it should really make that circular process. I don't know, Amy, if you have any kind of thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think circularity can take on a number of different forms. I mean, we've all walked past the GSMA stand and seen that amazing installation that's there today, which is made of, I can't remember how many, but recycled phones, and they're going to be then taken and repurposed to vulnerable communities in Africa, which is excellent. So there's circularity in that form, and then there's circularity in terms of genuine reuse and refurb and resale of the phones, and we see demand for both and play in both those spaces.
And ideally, you give that choice to the customer.
Absolutely.
Ideally, you're able to say, would you like to trade in this phone for X value, or you can donate it, and here's 3 different places you can donate it to, and have the mobile network operators and their service providers behind that supporting those choices.
Yeah, and giving them more control over the ways they want to kind of tackle the sustainability problem and their own carbon footprint.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think we've got about 5 minutes left, so I think maybe, Stephen, maybe if we could start with you, maybe if we all have a kind of final thought, a final takeaway on this topic, what you'd like to see from the industry moving forward, and kind of, I guess, what our next steps are in this place.
I mean, I think I'd like to see, along the lines of some of the things we've included in the vision around recycled content, longer lives of phones, renewable energy. So those trends that we see at the moment, I'd just love to see them accelerated, and I'd love to see a bit more of a conversation happening, across the industry of how we can do that, how we can really speed that up, because it's going in this direction, and I think there's more and more pressure across the industry, outside the industry, regulators, civil society groups that. The environmental pressure at the moment is unsustainable. So, let's make change happen. Let's make it happen quicker.
And Amy, maybe do you think how do you think we can really draw attention to this? Maybe from an operator's point of view, is there a way that operators could be kind of better communicating this to customers? What would you like to see change?
My view would be, I think the key is to have a really clear sustainability narrative as an operator, and that's both in terms of the offerings, the products, the technology that you're bringing to consumers, and also your own internal sustainability posture. But it's really important to have that narrative be very clear and concise and communicated to the consumers, so that they understand those choices, that they understand that they're frictionless, and that they understand that they can play a role themselves in supporting, our global ambitions that we all have. So that clear messaging and real focus on sustainability as a core pillar for a mobile operator, I think, is really key. And I would echo the acceleration comment as well. The more that we can see partners out there and technology providers out there leaning into this, the bigger breadth of products and tech we can have that are part of the solution.
Absolutely.
Any final thoughts from you, Georgia?
I'd say I agree fully with those. We need everybody to come together to make this change happen in the industry, and we fundamentally believe that when it comes to devices, consumers, unfortunately, when forced with having to go into their telco and deal with a device issue, that's typically not something that consumers look forward to. But if we can help make that an amazing experience for them, and so that they can make those sustainable choices easily, that's how we will drive scale and change. We start with the consumer, and they will help us drive it.
That's great.
Yeah, I think there's clearly a lot of work to be done, but there's been a lot of great progress, and I think the discussion really is moving very much in this direction now. It's becoming a much more popular topic here at MWC. I'm sure we've all had many conversations about kind of device life cycles over the last couple of days, and I'm sure that will continue for years to come. So thank you everyone for attending this session, and thank you to the panel. Please join me in giving them a round of applause.
Thank you.